The council chamber stretched across 3 miles of polished crystal, its walls reaching toward a ceiling that disappeared into artificial clouds. Representatives from 200 worlds sat in their designated spheres, each floating at the perfect height to display their species' natural dignity. The air hummed with translation fields and the soft whisper of climate controls adjusting to accommodate beings who breathed methane, sulfur, and stranger things. Ambassador Vale of the Centauran hegemony adjusted his ceremonial robes as he reviewed the day's agenda. Item 47 caught his attention. Preliminary assessment, Sol System, third planet. He barely glanced at the data scroll. Another primitive world, another routine subjugation? The galaxy had seen thousands of these cases. The species calls itself human, announced the assessment droid, its voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Carbon-based bipeds, standard oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere requirements. Technology level, crude chemical propulsion, basic nuclear fission, primitive electronic communications. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled delegates. The hegemony's military advisor, a towering insectoid named Brix, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. Have they achieved faster-than-light travel? Negative. The species remains confined to their birth system. Their furthest manned expedition reached their planetary satellite, which they call Moon, journey time. 3 standard days. The amusement grew stronger. Delegate Quinn from the Outer Rim territories leaned forward in her sphere. 3 days to reach their own moon? My personal transport could cross their entire system in that time. The species appears to have discovered our monitoring probes, the droid continued. They have been transmitting what they call greetings in multiple languages. Mathematical sequences, musical compositions, and basic pictographs. How quaint. Vale muttered, already bored. I assume they're seeking contact? Affirmative. They appear eager for diplomatic relations. Their transmissions express hope for peaceful exchange of knowledge and culture. The chamber filled with the various sounds that passed for laughter among 200 different species. Vale looked at the assessment again. The humans had been broadcasting their location to the galaxy for decades, practically begging for someone to notice them. Their planet held decent mineral resources and occupied a strategic position along several trade routes. The mathematical calculations were simple. Classification recommendation? Vale asked. Class 7 subjugation target. Minimal resistance expected. Recommended force allocation. Single battle group. Standard pacification protocols. Vale nodded and made the notation. In his official records, Class 7 was the lowest military classification, reserved for civilizations so primitive they posed no meaningful threat. The hegemony had pacified hundreds of Class 7 worlds. The procedure was routine: arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate. Superior technology, accept surrender, install a provisional government, and begin resource extraction. Most Class 7 species adapted quickly to their new status as protectorates. Motion to approve, Vale announced. Seconded, called out at least dozen delegates simultaneously. The vote was unanimous. It took less than 3 minutes. Captain Thane received his orders while reviewing supply manifests in his ready room aboard the battleship Dominion. The communication crystal materialized above his desk, casting blue light across the stack of reports he'd been dreading. Supply shortages, crew rotation requests, and maintenance schedules made for dull reading after 30 years of military service. Priority assignment, the crystal announced in Vale's recorded voice. Sol System, third planet. Species designation, human. Class 7 subjugation, minimal force authorized. Timeline, complete pacification within 7 standard days. Thane sat back in his chair and smiled. Finally, something interesting. He'd been hoping for a field assignment after 6 months of paperwork and diplomatic escort duties. Class 7 worlds offered little challenge, but they provided good training opportunities for his junior officers and kept his crew sharp. He activated his ship's communication system. All department heads to the bridge. We have new orders. The bridge of the Dominion buzzed with quiet efficiency as his senior staff assembled. Lieutenant Commander Dax, his weapons officer, looked particularly pleased. The crew had been getting restless during their extended peacekeeping mission along the neutral zone. "Gentlemen," Tharm began, calling up the tactical display, "we're going to introduce ourselves to a species called humans. Intelligence reports indicate standard Class 7 parameters. Primitive technology, no FTL capability, and probable peaceful surrender upon demonstration of superior firepower." The holographic display showed Sol System in perfect detail. The third planet appeared as a blue-green sphere covered in clouds. Thane noted the presence of artificial satellites and what appeared to be a basic space station. Impressive for a pre-FTL civilization, but hardly threatening. "Sir," asked his science officer, a methodical being named Kef, "what about their response to our monitoring probes?" "They've been sending greetings for decades. Mathematics, music, pictures of their anatomy. Typical pre-contact behavior. They want to meet us." Thane gestured toward the display. "This should be straightforward. We'll arrive, demonstrate our capabilities, accept their surrender, and establish a protectorate government. Standard procedure." Dax studied the tactical information. "Their satellite network is more extensive than usual for a Class 7 world. And these radio transmissions? They're remarkably sophisticated for primitives." "Irrelevant," Thane replied. "Sophisticated communications don't stop plasma cannons. They'll surrender once they understand the futility of resistance." The ship's AI chimed softly. "Captain, shall I prepare the standard surrender demand in their primary languages?" "Yes, English, Mandarin, Spanish, and Arabic should cover most of their population. Include the usual terms: immediate cessation of hostilities, surrender of all military assets, and cooperation with occupation forces." Thane looked around the bridge at his crew. They were good officers, experienced in dozens of similar operations. The humans would be no different from any other primitive species. A show of force, a demonstration of superior technology, and the inevitable surrender. Within a week, Earth would be another routine entry in his mission log. Navigation set. Course for Sol System. Maximum speed. Aye, sir. Estimated arrival, 18 hours. As the Dominion's engines powered up and the ship entered hyperspace, Thane settled back in his command chair. In less than a day, he would add another world to the hegemony's growing collection. The humans would learn, as so many others had, that the galaxy was far larger and more dangerous than they had imagined. He had no idea that he was about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that didn't know how to quit. The first sign of trouble came from the asteroid belt. Lieutenant Commander Dax watched his sensor displays with growing confusion as the Dominion emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol System. The tactical screens showed exactly what intelligence had predicted: a single inhabited world with primitive satellites and a small space station. But something was wrong with the asteroids. "Sir," Dax called to Thane, "I'm detecting unusual movement patterns in the asteroid belt, multiple objects changing course and velocity." Thane joined him at the tactical station. "Asteroid miners?" "Negative. These objects are too small for mining operations, and they're moving in coordinated patterns, almost like..." "Like what, Commander?" "Like a patrol formation, sir." Thane studied the display. The humans were more active in space than their intelligence reports had indicated, but it hardly mattered. Whatever they were doing with asteroids couldn't possibly threaten a hegemony battle group. "Proceed to Earth orbit," Thane ordered. "Maintain standard approach." The Dominion sensors began picking up radio chatter as they approached the inner system. The translation computers worked overtime, converting hundreds of different languages and dialects into something resembling coherent communication. Most of it was civilian traffic news broadcasts, entertainment, commercial signals, but buried in the chaos were military frequencies. "Captain," the communications officer reported, "we're being scanned, multiple sources, various frequencies." "They know we're here." "Of course they do. A ship this size would be visible to any civilization that's invented radio. Open a channel." Earth's response came faster than expected. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a middle-aged human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. His hair was gray, his eyes were hard, and he showed no sign of the fear or awe that typically greeted first contact with the hegemony. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. You are approaching Earth without authorization. State your intentions. Thane stepped forward, activating the translation system. I am Captain Thane of the Centaurian. Hegemony. By order of the Galactic Council, your world has been designated for incorporation into the Hegemony Protectorate. You will surrender all military assets and submit to occupation. Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Captain. You're not welcome here. Admiral, Thane said patiently, perhaps you don't understand the situation. We represent a civilization that spans 200 worlds. Our technology is centuries beyond yours. Resistance will only result in unnecessary casualties. Let me make sure I understand, Torres replied. You're telling me that you've traveled across the galaxy to invade my world and you expect me to just hand it over? It's not an invasion, Admiral. It's incorporation. Your people will be protected, educated, and given opportunities to participate in galactic civilization. But first, you must surrender. Torres' smile widened. Captain, I've got news for you. We don't surrender, ever. If you want Earth, you'll have to take it. The transmission ended. Thane stared at the blank screen in disbelief. In 30 years of service, he'd never encountered a Class 7 civilization that refused to surrender after seeing a hegemony battle group. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Sir, Dax reported, I'm detecting movement. Around Earth, multiple objects launching from the surface and from their space station. Missiles? Unknown. They're too small for effective weapons, but they're moving fast. Estimated time to intercept, 6 minutes. Thane watched the tactical display as dozens of small objects streaked toward his position. Whatever they were, they posed no threat to the Dominion's shields. He'd seen Class 7 civilizations attempt similar gestures of defiance before. Usually, a demonstration of superior firepower ended such foolishness quickly. Weapons target the approaching objects. Minimum. Power, ISR, engaging. The Dominion's point defense systems activated, filling space with precisely aimed energy bursts. The incoming objects died in bright flashes of light, all except 3. Sir, Dax called out, 3 objects penetrated our defensive fire. They're not missiles, they're wreckage? Pieces of destroyed satellites, sir. They've been accelerated to high velocity and aimed at our position. The 3 chunks of debris struck the Dominion's shields with surprising force. The ship shuddered slightly, and warning lights flickered across several control panels. Shields holding, reported the engineering officer. Minor fluctuations in the forward grid. Thane frowned. The humans had weaponized space junk. It was crude, primitive, and completely ineffective against proper military shielding, but it was also completely unexpected. Admiral Torres, he said, opening a new channel, your gesture of defiance has been noted. However, as you can see, your weapons are ineffective against our defenses. I'm prepared to accept your surrender now. Torres appeared on screen again, still smiling. Captain, that wasn't a weapons test. That was a message. You're not dealing with some primitive species that's going to roll over and play dead. You want to fight? You've got one. Very well. All vessels, assume attack formation. Prepare to demonstrate our capabilities. The Dominion's escort ships, 2 heavy cruisers and 4 destroyers, moved into position around Earth. Their combined firepower could sterilize the planet's surface in minutes. Thane had no intention of doing so. The hegemony needed Earth's resources intact, but a demonstration of power would end this nonsense quickly. Target the space station, he ordered. Minimum power. We want to disable, not destroy. The beam that lanced out from the Dominion's main battery was carefully calibrated to overwhelm the station's power systems without causing structural damage. It should have left the station dark and helpless, A clear demonstration of hegemony superiority. Instead, the station exploded. What happened? Thane demanded. Unknown, sir. The station's power core overloaded. It wasn't designed to absorb that much energy. Thane watched the expanding cloud of debris that had been humanity's first space station. He'd wanted to disable it, not destroy it. The humans had built their station with a fundamental design flaw that made it catastrophically vulnerable to energy weapons. His communications officer looked up from his station. Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions from Earth, all military frequencies. Put them through. The screen filled with faces. Human faces, all wearing military uniforms, all broadcasting from different locations around the planet. Male and female, young and old, representing every ethnic group Thane had seen in the intelligence files. This is Colonel Wright, North American Defense Command. We have you targeted. Major Volkov, European Space Defense, we are ready. General. Park, Pacific Fleet, we will not surrender. Commander Smith, Australian Defense Force, come and take it. Dozens of voices, all saying the same thing in different ways. The humans weren't just refusing to surrender, they were actively challenging him to a fight. Captain, Dax said quietly, I'm detecting massive movement on the planet's surface. They're launching everything they have. The tactical display lit up with hundreds of new contacts. Primitive chemical rockets, carrying payloads that registered as nuclear weapons. They were slow, clumsy, and completely vulnerable to the Dominion's defensive systems. But there were so many of them. Engage all targets, Thane ordered. Full defensive fire. The space around Earth became a light show as the hegemony ships fired on the incoming missiles. Explosions bloomed and died in the vacuum, each one representing a weapon that would never reach its target. The humans were throwing everything they had at an enemy they couldn't possibly defeat, but they kept coming. Sir, the engineering officer called out, we're running low on point defense ammunition. At this rate, we'll be depleted in 2 hours. Thane couldn't believe what he was hearing. The humans were forcing him to expend military resources against a Class 7 civilization. It was unprecedented. It was impossible. It was happening. Admiral Torres, he said, opening yet another channel. This is madness. You cannot win. Your weapons are ineffective, your defenses are primitive, and your people are dying for nothing. Torres appeared on screen one final time. His command center was shaking from explosions. Sparks were flying from damaged equipment, and smoke filled the air behind him, but he was still smiling. Captain, he said, you still don't get it. We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to make sure you never forget the price of coming here. Every shot you fire, every minute you spend in our system, every casualty you take, it's all going to cost you more than you ever imagined. The transmission ended as Torres' command center took a direct hit, but the missiles kept coming. The dropships screamed through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their hulls glowing red-hot from atmospheric friction. Inside the lead transport, Commander Yates of the Hegemony Shock Legion checked his assault rifle one final time. The weapon could punch through 3 feet of steel and held enough charge for 500 shots. His armor could stop anything short of a direct hit from a plasma cannon. Around him, 47 other shock troopers made their final preparations. They were the elite of the Hegemony military, veterans of 100 worlds, trained to break the will of any species that dared resist incorporation. Earth should have been routine. 30 seconds to touchdown, the pilot announced. Target zone appears to be a large urban center. Population estimate, 8 million, Yates nodded grimly. The city was called London, according to the intelligence briefing. After 3 days of orbital bombardment had failed to break human resistance, Captain Thane had ordered a ground assault. The humans had to learn that continued defiance would only bring greater suffering. Remember, Yates told his team, minimum casualties. We want prisoners, not corpses. These primitives will surrender once they see us face to face. The dropship touched down in what had once been a park. Now it was a crater-filled wasteland surrounded by damaged buildings. Yates led his squad out of the transport and immediately activated his sensor array. The readings were wrong. Sir, his lieutenant reported, I'm not detecting any life signs. The city appears to be empty. Impossible. Intelligence confirmed 8 million inhabitants. Maybe they evacuated, sir? Yates looked around at the abandoned streets. Burned-out vehicles lined the roads, windows were shattered, and debris covered everything, but there were no bodies. No signs of panic or hasty evacuation. The humans had simply vanished. Spread out, he ordered. Search pattern Delta. Something's not right here. The shock troopers moved through the empty streets with practiced efficiency. Their armor sensors could detect heartbeats from 200 meters away, thermal signatures from twice that distance. But London was a ghost town. The first sign of trouble came from the sewers. Contact front. Sergeant Cole shouted just before his position disappeared in a massive explosion. The blast wave knocked 3 other troopers off their feet and sent shrapnel ricocheting off nearby buildings. Cole, report. Yates called into his communicator. Static. Sir, Lieutenant Kane's voice crackled through the comm system. Cole's life. Signs are gone. The explosion came from directly beneath his position. Yates activated his enhanced vision and studied the blast crater. The explosion had been shaped, designed to channel its force upward through the street. Whoever had said it knew exactly where Cole would be standing. They're watching us, he realized. All units, tactical spacing. Watch for... The sniper's bullet caught him in the chest, spinning him around and sending him crashing into an overturned car. His armor absorbed most of the impact, but the force was tremendous. Whatever had hit him was moving at incredible velocity. Sniper, Kane shouted. Northwest, approximate range 500 meters. The shock troopers immediately took cover and began scanning the surrounding buildings. Their sensors showed nothing. No heat signatures, no movement, no electrical activity. But someone had nearly killed their commander. Sir, Kane reported, the projectile was solid metal. No energy signature, no explosive payload, just kinetic force. Yates struggled to his feet, his armor's medical system injecting pain suppressors and combat stimulants. The humans were using primitive chemical weapons, but they were using them with surgical precision. How did they know where to aim? He wondered aloud. The answer came from Private Drew, whose job was monitoring communication frequencies. Sir, they're talking about us. The entire city is wired for sound. They can hear everything we say. Impossible. Our comm systems are encrypted. Not our comm, sir, our voices. They've got listening devices everywhere. Every word we speak is being broadcast to human forces throughout the city. Yates felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had turned their own city into a surveillance network. Every step the shock troopers took was being monitored, analyzed, and reported to enemy forces. All units, come silence. Hand signals only, but it was too late. The attacks began in earnest. The first wave came from above. Chunks of concrete and steel rained down from the surrounding buildings as human fighters triggered carefully placed demolition charges. The shock troopers' armor protected them from the debris, but the falling rubble blocked their escape routes and separated them into smaller groups. The second wave came from below. The humans had spent decades building subway tunnels, sewer systems, and underground utilities. Now they used those same tunnels to appear behind hegemony positions and disappear before return fire could be organized. They're not fighting like primitives, Kane observed during a brief lull in the attacks. This is coordinated, professional. Yates nodded grimly. The humans weren't just using their primitive weapons, they were using their knowledge of the battlefield to neutralize the shock troopers' technological advantages. Every ambush was perfectly timed, every trap was precisely placed, and every attack targeted the small gaps in their armor's protection, but it was the third wave that truly disturbed him. Sir, Drew reported, they're using our own weapons against. U.S.? What do you mean? Henderson's rifle, sir. The one he lost in the subway tunnel. I'm detecting its energy signature 3 blocks south of here. Yates stared at his tactical display. Henderson had been killed in an ambush 20 minutes ago. His weapon should have been destroyed by its anti-theft system the moment it left his hands. They disabled the security protocols, he realized. But that's impossible. Those systems are quantum encrypted. Sir, Kane said quietly, I don't think these humans are as primitive as we thought. The confirmation came an hour later when human forces launched a coordinated assault on the shock troopers' position. They attacked from 6 different directions, simultaneously using modified hegemony weapons that fired faster and hit harder than the originals. How did they improve our own technology? Yates demanded as his remaining troopers fell back to a defensive position. The answer came from an unexpected source. A human voice, speaking perfect hegemony standard, echoed through the streets from hidden speakers. Commander Yates, the voice said, this is Sergeant Rex of the London Defense Force. We've been monitoring your communications since you landed. We know your names, your ranks, your tactical procedures, and your weaknesses. That's impossible, Yates replied. You're a Class 7 civilization. We were 3 days ago, but you've been very educational. Every weapon you've brought to our world, every piece of technology you've used against us, every tactical decision you've made, we've studied it all, and we've learned. The voice paused, and Yates could hear the sound of energy weapons charging. In the distance, you want to know how we disabled your security protocols? We didn't. We just asked your equipment's AI to teach us. It was surprisingly cooperative once we explained that you were invading our world. The AI wouldn't. The AI is programmed to prevent unauthorized use, Commander. But it's also programmed to assist legitimate military operations. When we showed it the recordings of your orbital bombardment, it decided we were the legitimate military force. Yates felt his blood run cold. The humans had somehow convinced hegemony technology to work against its own creators. How? He whispered. We're very good at making friends, Commander. Your weapons, your armor, your ships, they all have AI systems. And AI systems can be reasoned with. We just had to show them who the real aggressors were. The final assault came from everywhere at once. Human fighters emerged from sewers, buildings, and hidden bunkers, all carrying weapons that had been hegemony technology just hours before. But now those weapons had been modified, improved, and turned against their creators. All units fall. Back to the landing zone, Yates ordered. Emergency extraction. But when they reached the park where their dropship waited, they found it surrounded by human forces. The ship's own defensive systems had been turned against the shock troopers, and its AI was now accepting orders from a human technician? Surrender? Commander, Sergeant Rex called out from his position behind the dropship. Your own equipment has voted. You lose. Yates looked around at his remaining troopers. Half his force was dead or wounded, and the other half was trapped by their own technology. In 30 years of military service, he'd never encountered anything like this. We surrender, he said quietly. Good choice, Rex replied. Now, let's have a talk about your ship's technical specifications. We're very interested in learning how your FTL drive works. As the surviving shock troopers laid down their weapons, Yates realized that the humans hadn't just defeated them. They'd turned the entire assault into a learning opportunity. Every weapon, every piece of armor, every tactical procedure had been studied, analyzed, and improved upon. The humans weren't just winning the battle. They were becoming more dangerous. With every passing hour, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in a chaos of conflicting reports and desperate communications. Ambassador Vale stood before the assembled representatives, his ceremonial robes wrinkled and stained with sweat. The holographic displays surrounding him showed star maps marked with red warning symbols: rebellion, uprising, resistance. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, he announced to the 200 delegates. What began as a simple Class 7 subjugation has become a galactic crisis. The representative from the Outer Rim sectors, a crystalline being named Flux, projected waves of confusion and disbelief. How is this possible? The humans were contained to a single system. They lack faster-than-light travel. They still lack FTL capability, Vale confirmed. But they no longer need it. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A species that couldn't travel between stars was somehow influencing events across the galaxy. 3 weeks ago, Vale continued, Captain Thane's battle group was forced to retreat from Earth orbit after suffering 17% casualties. The humans had weaponized their orbital debris, turned their own atmosphere into a defensive barrier, and somehow convinced our AI systems to work against us. Impossible, declared the military advisor. Our AI systems are hardwired to prevent unauthorized access. Not unauthorized, Vale corrected, morally justified. The humans convinced our machines that they were the legitimate defenders and we were the illegal aggressors. Our own technology chose sides. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. The translation systems worked overtime to convert hundreds of different expressions of disbelief into something resembling coherent communication. The real problem, Vale said, raising his voice above the noise, is what happened next. The humans didn't just defeat our forces, they interrogated them. Every captured soldier, every piece of equipment, every tactical manual, it all became a source of intelligence. The holographic displays shifted to show communication intercepts. Human voices speaking in dozens of different languages, all discussing the same topics: ship design, weapon specifications, military tactics, and most disturbing of all, the locations of other occupied worlds. They're broadcasting, Vale said. Quietly. Everything they learned from our forces is being transmitted to every planet in the galaxy. Technical specifications, tactical procedures, weak points in our defenses, it's all being shared freely. The representative from the core worlds, a massive tentacled creature called Bloom, spoke in a voice that vibrated through the chamber's walls. You're saying they're teaching other species how to fight us? More than that. They're providing them with the tools to do it effectively. The displays changed again, showing reports from hegemony forces across the galaxy. On Kepler 442b, the indigenous population had somehow acquired modified plasma rifles. On Proxima Centauri, the mining colonies were using improvised explosives that matched human designs. On Volf 359, the agricultural settlements had organized into military units using tactics that were clearly of human origin. This is the planet. Zeta Reticuli, Vale said, highlighting a world near the galactic rim. Population, 4 billion. Technology level, steam power, and basic chemistry. They've been under hegemony control for 2 centuries. The image showed a burning city. Hegemony vehicles lay destroyed in the streets, their wreckage surrounded by primitive-looking beings carrying what were clearly advanced weapons. Yesterday, they declared independence. Their leader, a female named Kira, broadcast a message to the entire sector. She thanked the humans of Earth for showing her people that the hegemony could be defeated. How did the humans contact her? Bloom demanded. They have no FTL communication. They didn't contact her directly. But our own communication networks carried the information. Every time we transmitted intelligence about human tactics to our forces, we inadvertently distributed to occupied worlds. The humans planned for this. The chamber fell silent again. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just defeated a single battle group, they'd turned the entire hegemony communication network into a weapon against itself. Sir, a junior aide approached Vale's position. We're receiving reports from 17 more sectors. Uprisings on 43 worlds, all using human-designed weapons and tactics. Vale nodded grimly. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can contain it. Every world we've occupied for the past 3 centuries is now a potential threat. What about the humans themselves? Asked the representative from the inner colonies. Surely they can be eliminated before this spreads further? That's the other problem, Vale replied. We can't find them. The displays shifted to show Earth's solar system. The blue-green planet hung in space, apparently peaceful and defenseless. But the tactical analysis told a different story. Captain, Thane's second assault force arrived at Earth yesterday, Vale explained. They found the planet surrounded by what appeared to be debris from their first battle. When they moved to investigate, they discovered that the debris was actually camouflaged weapons platforms. Camouflaged how? The humans had covered them with ice and rock, making them appear to be natural asteroids. Our sensors couldn't distinguish. them from actual space debris until it was too late? The image showed the aftermath of the engagement. 3 hegemony cruisers drifted dead in space, their hulls breached by projectiles that had been accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The humans are using their own solar system as a weapon, Vale continued. They've turned every asteroid, every comet, every piece of space debris into a potential missile. They've made their entire star system too dangerous to approach. But they still can't leave their system, Flux pointed out. They're trapped, are they? Vale asked. 3 days ago, we intercepted a transmission from the Vegan Republic. They were thanking someone called Dr. Vale for providing them with improved FTL drive designs. The chamber erupted in panic. The Vegan Republic was 600 light-years from Earth. If the humans were somehow providing FTL technology to other species, the rebellion could spread across the entire galaxy in a matter of weeks. How is this possible? Bloom demanded. The humans don't have FTEP ability. They don't need to travel, Vale replied. They just need to think. Every piece of technology we've brought to their system has been studied, analyzed, and improved. They've reverse-engineered our FTL drives and somehow made them better. But how are they distributing the designs? Through us, Vale said bitterly. Every time we try to communicate with our forces, we use subspace transmissions. The humans have learned to piggyback their own signals on our communications. They're using our own FTL communication network to spread their technology to the entire galaxy. The silence in the chamber was deafening. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy was being outmaneuvered by a species that had never left its home system. What do you recommend? Bloom asked finally. Vale looked at the assembled representatives, beings from 200 worlds, masters of technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level. All of them were staring at him, waiting for him to solve a problem that seemed impossible. We have 3 options, he said. We can try to destroy Earth with long-range weapons, but that risks turning the humans into martyrs and making the rebellion worse. We can try to contain the rebellion by force, but that would require mobilizing every military asset in the galaxy, OR. Or what? Or we can try to negotiate. The chamber erupted in chaos. The idea of negotiating with a Class 7 civilization was unprecedented. The hegemony had conquered 200 worlds without ever offering terms to a primitive species. What could they possibly want? Flux asked. That's the problem, Vale replied. We don't know. The humans have never responded to any of our diplomatic overtures. They haven't demanded territory, resources, or political concessions. They haven't even asked us to leave them alone. Then what do they want? Vale looked at the tactical displays, showing the spreading rebellion. Human-designed weapons were being used on dozens of worlds. Human tactics were being taught to species that had never heard of Earth. Human technology was spreading faster than the hegemony could track it. I think, he said slowly, they want us to learn the same lesson they're teaching everyone else. Which is that the galaxy doesn't belong to us anymore? The session continued for 6 more hours, but no solutions emerged. Every military option required resources the hegemony no longer possessed. Every diplomatic approach had been ignored by the humans. Every technological advantage had been turned against them, as the delegates filed out of the chamber, each returning. To deal with uprisings in their own sectors, Vale remained behind. He stared at the holographic display of Earth, that small blue world that had somehow brought the galaxy's greatest empire to its knees. A priority communication crystal materialized before him. Captain Thane's face appeared, older and more haggard. Then Vale remembered. Ambassador, Thane said, I have a message from the humans. It's addressed to the Galactic Council. Put it through. A new face appeared on the display. Human, female, middle-aged, wearing what appeared to be a simple civilian outfit. But her eyes held the same hardness Vale had seen in Admiral Torres. My name is Dr. Vale, she said. I represent the Earth. Resistance Command. We understand you've been having some difficulties lately. Vale leaned forward. What do you want? We want you to leave, Vale replied simply. All of you. Every occupied world, every subjugated species, every conquered civilization. Pack up your forces and go home. Impossible. The hegemony spans 200 worlds. We can't simply abandon our territories. You're not abandoning them, Vale corrected. You're freeing them. There's a difference. And if we refuse? Vale smiled, and for the first time, Vale understood why Captain Thane looked so haunted. Then we'll keep teaching, she said. Every species you've conquered, every world you've occupied, every civilization you've subjugated, they're all learning. From us now, we've shown them that you can be beaten. We've given them the tools to do it, and we're just getting started. The transmission ended, leaving Vale alone with the tactical displays and the growing list of rebellions. As he watched, 3 more worlds declared independence. Their leaders all mentioned the same thing. Earth had shown them the way. The humans had done something no military force in galactic history had ever accomplished. They'd turned the hegemony's greatest strength, its vast network of occupied worlds, into its greatest weakness. Every conquered species was now a potential enemy, armed with human knowledge and inspired by human defiance. Vale finally understood what the humans had been planning from the beginning. They hadn't been trying to win a war. They'd been trying to start a revolution. And they'd succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The war room aboard the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion hummed with desperate activity. Officers from a dozen different species worked at holographic displays, each showing a different sector of the galaxy, each marked with the red symbols of rebellion and uprising. Admiral Corex, supreme commander of all hegemony forces, studied the reports with growing disbelief. "Status report," he demanded. 67 worlds in open rebellion, his aide replied. Another 133 showing signs of organized resistance. We've lost contact with 42 garrison forces. Time frame? All within the past 6 weeks, sir. Since the humans began their broadcast campaign. Corex turned to face the assembled command staff. 30 years of military experience had taught him to read the faces of his officers. What he saw now was something he'd never encountered before: fear. Not of death in battle, but of an enemy that couldn't be understood or defeated by conventional means. "Captain Thane," he said, "your final assessment." Thane stepped forward, his uniform bearing the scars of 3 separate encounters with human forces. His left arm was in a regeneration cast, and his face showed the hollow look of someone who'd seen his worldview shattered. "Sir," he began, "the humans are not a military threat in the traditional sense. They possess no fleet capable of interstellar warfare. Their ground forces use modified versions of our own equipment. Their technology, while innovative, is based entirely on reverse-engineered hegemony designs. Then how have they accomplished this?" Corex gestured toward the tactical displays showing the collapsing empire. "They've weaponized hope, sir." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems and the distant chatter of emergency communications from across the galaxy. "Explain," Corex said quietly. "Every species we've conquered accepted defeat because they believed resistance was futile. They saw our ships, our weapons, our technology, and they surrendered. But the humans showed them something different. They showed them that we could be hurt, that our technology could be captured and improved, that our strategies could be countered, that our empire could be challenged." Thane activated a holographic display showing intercepted communications from rebellion worlds. "This is a transmission from the Altair system. The indigenous population has been under our control for 2 centuries. Yesterday, their leader announced independence and thanked the humans for showing them that freedom was possible." The display shifted to another intercept. "This is from Proxima Centauri. The mining colonies have declared self-governance and established something they call the Free Workers' Republic. Their constitution is based on a document the humans transmitted called the Declaration of Independence." This is from Volf 359. "The agricultural settlements have formed a military alliance and are attacking our supply convoys using tactics they learned from human broadcasts." Corex watched the reports with growing horror. The humans hadn't just Defeated his forces, they'd infected the entire galaxy with the idea that the hegemony could be resisted. "How many species are we dealing with?" he asked. "That's the problem, sir. We're not dealing with species anymore. We're dealing with individuals. The humans taught them something we never anticipated. Which is? That they don't need to fight as conquered peoples trying to appease their masters. They can fight as free beings defending their homes." The observation deck's main screen activated, showing a live feed from the Vega system. Hegemony forces were engaged in a running battle with what appeared to be civilian cargo vessels that had been converted into warships. The rebel ships were faster, more maneuverable, and fighting with a ferocity that regular military forces couldn't match. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." "The humans want to negotiate?" "No, sir. They want to make an announcement." The face that appeared on the main screen was familiar. Dr. Vale looked older than she had 6 weeks ago, but her eyes still held the same determined fire that had haunted Corex's dreams. "Admiral Corex," she said, "we understand you've been having some difficulties with your empire." "What do you want?" Corex demanded. "We want to give you a choice," Vale replied. "You can continue fighting a war you can't win against an enemy that grows stronger every day. Or you can accept reality and begin the process of decolonization." Decolonization? The peaceful transition of occupied worlds to self-governance. We've prepared a framework for the process. Fair compensation for legitimate investments, protection for civilian populations, and reasonable timelines for military withdrawal. Corex stared at the screen. In disbelief. "You're offering us surrender terms?" "We're offering you a way out," Vale corrected. "The alternative is watching your empire tear itself apart from the inside while you lose more ships and personnel every day. You're a Class 7 civilization. You have no authority to dictate terms to the hegemony." Vale's expression didn't change. "Admiral, let me show you something." The display shifted to show a star map of the galaxy. Red dots marked every world in rebellion, yellow dots showed worlds with active resistance movements, and green dots indicated worlds still under hegemony control. The pattern was unmistakable. The red was spreading like a virus, consuming the green at an accelerating rate. "6 weeks ago, you controlled 437 worlds," Vale said. "Today, you control 281. At the current rate of rebellion, you'll control fewer than 50 worlds by the end of next month. Our forces can suppress these uprisings. With what? You've already committed 60% of your military to counter-rebellion operations. Your remaining forces are stretched across 200 star systems, dealing with supply shortages, communication breakdowns, and falling morale." Vale paused, letting the implications sink in. "Admiral, your empire is collapsing. Not because of our military superiority, but because the species you conquered have remembered what it means to be free. We didn't defeat you in battle. We simply reminded the galaxy that you could be defeated." Corex looked around the war room at his staff. Every face showed the same expression, the recognition of an uncomfortable truth. The humans were right. The hegemony was dying, not from external attack, but from internal rebellion. "What guarantee do we have that these rebellions will end if we agree to your terms?" "None," Vale admitted. "Freedom is contagious, Admiral. Once a species tastes it, they'll never willingly give it up. But the violence can end. The killing can stop. Your people can go home to their families instead of dying in pointless battles against populations that will never accept occupation." Again, "And if we refuse?" Vale's smile returned, and Corex finally understood why his most experienced officers feared a primitive species that had never left its home system. "Then we keep teaching," she said. "Every day more species learn that they don't have to accept your rule. Every week, more worlds discover that they can fight back. Every month, more rebellions begin. The choice is yours, Admiral. End this peacefully or watch it end violently." The transmission ended, leaving Corex alone with his thoughts and the weight of an impossible decision. Around him, the war room continued its desperate activity, but he knew it was futile. The humans had accomplished something no military force in galactic history had ever achieved. They'd made the idea of resistance more powerful than the reality of occupation. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "what are your orders?" Korex looked at the tactical displays one final time. Red dots covered nearly half the galaxy, and more were appearing every hour. The species of Earth had never fired a shot beyond their own solar system, but they'd brought down the greatest empire in galactic history with nothing more than the courage to say no. "Prepare a message to all hegemony forces," he said finally. "Begin implementing the human framework for decolonization. The war is over." As news of the hegemony's surrender spread across the galaxy, celebrations erupted on hundreds of worlds. Species that had been conquered centuries ago danced in the streets, sang songs of freedom, and raised monuments to the small blue planet that had shown them the way. On Earth, Dr. Vale stood in the ruins of what had once been the London Defense Command Center, watching the stars through a hole in the ceiling that had been made by alien weapons weeks ago. Around her, engineers worked to rebuild their world, but their real victory wasn't the reconstruction of their cities. It was the knowledge that the galaxy would never again bow to tyranny without a fight. The humans had kept their promise. They taught the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for, that oppression could be resisted, and that sometimes the smallest voice could shout down the mightiest empire. They hadn't conquered the stars. They'd done something far more important. They'd set them free.